Hey everybody, it's Jim here, and today we're going to be talking about the Stratocaster. We're going to be talking about the Jazzmaster. We're going to be comparing them in terms of how they sound and also how they feel, some strengths, some weaknesses, and all that kind of fun stuff. I do want to say this though, I feel like this often goes overlooked on YouTube. We're using baseline settings on the amplifier and on the pedals, meaning neither is tuned perfectly for each of these guitars. When you're actually sitting in your own rig with any of these, you might find yourself upping up some treble, taking away some bass, adding in some mids, dialing the gain back to get the best possible sound out of each specific instrument. But for YouTube's continuity's sake, it's best to just keep things in line and uniform so that it's more of a level playing field. That out of the way, we are going to start off with some little details and factoids about the two of them. First being things that they have in common structurally. Both of these have a 25.5-inch scale length. They both have a vibrato system and single coil pickups. The Strat has 3. The Jazzmaster has 2 of them. On average here, Strats are going to be a little bit lighter than a Jazzmaster unless you get one from the mid to late 70s. Those things can be bowling balls, but in general, if weight is something that is of serious kind of concern to you or priority, more often than not, Strat's going to be a little bit lighter. Whereas on the Jazzmaster, I mentioned the vibrato. This is the best vibrato that Fender makes, or anyone makes, in my opinion, and it's something that makes this guitar and the Jaguar really desirable, admirable, and guitars that I enjoy playing when I want to use this kind of effect in a song. However, I know most people that click these kinds of videos are primarily interested in hearing the sound comparison. So I'm going to let you know the rig that we're going to be playing these through today. It's going to be guitar, straight into the Benson preamp, the Walrus Audio Eras for some distortion. Yeah, we actually did some of that today. And then mic'd up by the SM57 is the Victory V40 Deluxe combo. So let's start with some clean tones. There are a few details that I'd like to address here between that initial sound comparison between these two guitars. The first being, you can't exactly do a like-for-like comparison when you're talking about a combination of pickups between a Strat and a Jazzmaster, because the Jazzmaster has 2 pickups, so there's only one possible option for combining pickups. The Stratocaster, I opted for position 4. because it's the most commonly used one by me, and in general it's the one I hear the most when people do want that kind of dual pickup combination. That's kind of where home is. So not exactly totally like for like. The second thing is just a sheer observation that I noticed the very first time that I played this Jazzmaster versus my JV Stratocaster. It just sounds huge. There's so much more low end in this guitar versus the Strat, and I think a lot of people might initially hear that and say, oh my god, the Jazzmaster sounds so much better there. Maybe isolated it will, and maybe depending on the track and the number of other instruments involved in the song that it's being used in, it can work just fine. But sometimes, you know, it's nice to have something that just cuts right through and sets its own little mark within a mix itself, which the Strat does extremely well. However, when it comes to beefing things up a little bit, I'd like to show you just how great of a job the Benson preamp can do, or other similar kind of amp in a box or preamp pedals, with the Stratocaster. Really brings it to life, especially on the neck pickup. And also, I want you to pay attention how the Jazzmaster does with the same exact settings. Now that is what I'm talking about when it comes to a Strat and Strat tone. You give me just a little bit of dirt, a little bit of push on a guitar like this, especially on the neck pickup, and it is an absolute home run in my book. Man, sounds so good with the Benson preamp. Jazzmaster, on the other hand, I want to reference what I said earlier in this video about settings. I would have dialed a lot of that bass out of the Benson preamp and boosted the tremolo potentially a little bit more, because it was a bit of a mudfest, quite frankly, when using the same unity settings, meaning everything was at 12 on the Benson preamp. The Strat came to life, the Jazzmaster and that bottom end ended up being, in my book, a little bit overbearing. Now, I want to hear it with some serious game. We're going to turn on the Walrus audio, and you might be surprised at the results of this. We're on the second voice. Again, everything is at 12 o'clock going into the Victory V40 Deluxe. Now I realized that there were a lot of players like Yngwie Malmsteen who used a Stratocaster to get some neoclassical slash metal slash super aggressive tones in that time frame of music. But that being said, this guitar sounded gigantic with the Walrus Audio eras. That bottom end that this guitar naturally has a little bit more of compared to the Stratocaster is very, very apparent in that aspect. But that's not to say that the Strat sounded bad either. Yeah, it's a little bit thinner, but it cuts well. When you put that with a bass guitar and mix in a drum kit, the Strat might have a little bit of an easier time fitting into that scenario, whereas this guy, again, might have to alter the settings on the EQ of the pedal or in post when you're actually doing your edits in Pro Tools. But man, had a lot of fun. I was very surprised at my results with that. I wasn't expecting this to sound so good with it. Final thoughts here, now that we're done with the kind of playing segments. I mentioned this being the best, in my opinion, vibrato that Fender or any brand makes. I think the Strat one is also very good. However, when you want to use it on this guitar, it feels much more accessible. And it's because the arm itself is a little bit longer and the position of it. But the Strat 2, I feel like if you're not somebody that wants to use it kind of for those big sways and you're more of like a tasteful or very sparingly using vibrato user, the Strat will do you just fine. And even if you want to abuse it, Strat can kind of handle it. But this thing, you can wail on this vibrato and it just stays in tune for days if it's set up correctly. Perfect. Now there's two more things I would like to finish on before we wrap up this video. The first being the ergonomics of each instrument. The Jazzmaster, it's bigger. The body feels a lot bigger when you're sitting with this guitar, and it also feels a little bit further away because of it, despite the fact that it has the same exact scale length. The Stratocaster, a little bit lighter on average, as I discussed earlier in the video, feels much more compact in your hands when you're switching back and forth. It becomes very, very apparent. So maybe if you want something like that, that would be a better choice. If you're somebody that doesn't mind, or maybe you're a bigger guy, Jazzmaster, you might feel perfectly comfortable with one of these as well. The last thing I want to talk about, they say that the Jazzmaster sounds like a Stratocaster on steroids. I can kind of see that. So if you could only have one of these guitars, you'd be fine with either one. And fortunately, there are enough kind of budget lines that you can get a quality make of either of these guitars within, your monetary situation and be happy with it, knowing, especially if you stick with some of the Squiers, be careful. You might have a lot of fun with some of that hardware. Yeah, good luck with that. But as a whole here, both awesome guitars. If you ever get the chance to try them back to back, I think you should. You might be surprised how similar they are in some ways, but how vastly different they feel and respond in others. If you found this video helpful, feel free, leave me a like, leave me a comment, let me know which one you prefer, not just out of this test, but in general, or if you own either or both, which one is your favorite go-to of the two. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one. Take it easy, everybody.